Today I've got a letter that I received from a young man, only 14 years old, who is struggling with severe porn-induced erectile dysfunction and has some questions. Hi Noah, I'm currently 14 years old and struggling with some form of sexual dysfunction. Although it might be medical, I highly doubt it because of the sheer amount of pornography I have watched and jerked off to. I don't see why it would be medical. I mean, the only thing that could cause a medical dysfunction is my relatively poor diet. I have a pretty unbalanced diet, but I guess most teens do. But anyway, I'm too scared to talk to a GP as I am deeply embarrassed about having PIED at the age of 14, and I certainly won't talk to my family and friends about it. That's why I am emailing you. 14 years old. I wish I could say that I was surprised to be hearing from very young teens about being impotent, because that would have been unheard of without some other severe medical disorder happening at the same time in prior times. But now it's becoming more and more commonplace. And I was in the same position. I didn't realize by the time I was 14 that that's what was going on because I hadn't tried real sex yet. But I'm sure that if I had, I would have had the same troubles as you. As far as going to a general practitioner, probably not necessary at this point if you're not feeling pain or other symptoms that aren't just a lack of sexual drive or erectile functioning. And we'll get into the details of your story a bit more later, but it's likely that you're going to see a lot of progress without too much time away from pornography, and that'll reinforce your knowledge that this is probably just a porn-induced sexual dysfunction, which most general practitioners still don't know much or anything about, unfortunately. As for diet, it would be very rare indeed for a teenager to have impotence because of a poor diet, unless that person is pre-diabetic or diabetic, potentially. So unless you're at that level, if you're just normal teen eating junk food, it's going to affect you in the long run, and it could lead to less sex drive and erectile functioning later on in your life, but usually it takes many years or decades to get to that point. Now that said, it's never too early to start taking care of yourself and eating right. So I recommend learning all that you can about that. I'll put some links into the description below, places to get you started about how to eat more nutritionally. And it doesn't have to be boring just because it's healthy. Once you get more used to eating whole, nutritious foods that nourish your body and leave you feeling good rather than junky or bloated or whatever afterwards, it actually starts to become something that you crave. It's much like leaving pornography behind. At first you'll crave it, but eventually you'll come to the point where what you really want is a healthy sexual and romantic connection, and you don't want the porn anymore. Porn is like sexual junk food. And so, just the same with nutrition and actual food, once you leave the junk food behind for long enough and you get used to the healthy stuff, that's what you'll start to crave because you feel good while eating it and after eating it. And also, of course, exercise is a good part of that and will help you along this journey. Keep your mind off of pornography temptations and channel some of that energy that you'll probably be getting back now that you're not spending so much of it using pornography. So after that context, I would like to share to you my story. It would be absolutely incredible if you could do a video response to this on your YouTube channel, as I cannot afford a private video session. It might also help others who are going through a similar journey to me. Well, I'm doing that right now, and at 14 years old, I wouldn't have been able to afford a private coaching session either. I can tell you that I do work with people under 18 when their parents are involved and when their parents are asking me to come in and help coach their child through a problem that's pornography related. So that is one thing that might become an option for you if you do decide to bring your parents in and talk to them and say, hey, I've got this problem and it's embarrassing, but I really want to open up to you and ask for help. That could be an option, either finding a counselor with them to talk through some of the emotional issues this has caused, and or actually talking with me. So keep in touch, and if that's something that you want to do, put me in touch with your parents and we might be able to work something out. I started masturbating around the age of 11 to pictures of girls in bikinis on Instagram pages. Although I was unable to ejaculate at this point, I was instantly hooked to the feeling of an orgasm. I continued to masturbate through the age of 11 to pictures of ladies in bikinis on Instagram. But one day this all changed, and I believe this was the start of my PIED experience. I looked up a hashtag on Instagram called Naked Lady, and some video pornography appeared. Pornography is unfortunately everywhere out there on the interwebs, even on social media platforms frequented by children and preteens. And that is a massive failure of adults to protect minors from this sort of material and to prepare them for exposure to that, because it is inevitable at some point. So on behalf of all adults who should have had this on lock and created systems that were more healthful for young people like you growing up, I apologize. And as you know, I'm trying to do better. I'm trying to promote this conversation so that we can protect young people growing up in our society and teach them how to have healthy relationships and healthy sexuality that actually leads to happiness and contentment and connection, rather than addiction, escalation, loss of sexual function, emotional and relationship issues. So, unfortunately, the onus, the responsibility is now on you, unfairly so, at 14, having started using porn at 11, to recover. That doesn't mean you have to do it alone or without guidance, but you do have to do the work. You do have to make the decisions and walk through the doors that people like myself show you. And that's unfair. You shouldn't have to deal with this at this age. You shouldn't have been exposed to pornography at 11 and gotten hooked on it. That shouldn't have been allowed, but it was, and I apologize. At first, I was shocked and scared of this porn, but then gradually I started to crave it. About a week after this incident, Instagram's employees realized that video pornography was being released on their pages, so they started to take it down. At this point, I wasn't turned on anymore by the pictures of the ladies in bikinis, and I started to crave the more hardcore video porn. So I started to look at different Instagram hashtags. It was like a game. I had to be on the right hashtag at the right time to seek the porn that I wanted to see. Now I realized that this was a very unhealthy habit. Now pay attention to what he says here and how quickly that tolerance and escalation happens. Tolerance meaning desensitization to the content that used to get him so excited. Within a week of seeing video pornography, the pictures of pretty ladies in bikinis didn't do it for him anymore. And he had become accustomed to this more visual, more extreme, more stimulating material that he'd been watching. And this process is going to continue as long as we're using pornography. Most people do escalate and escalate, always looking for something more exciting, whether it's a new genre, new actresses, new performers, finding the perfect clip that perfectly accesses whatever fetish you've developed or whatever sexual act you fixated on, or using many, many videos at once, having multiple tabs open, or building a massive collection, downloading gigabytes and gigabytes so that you have access to unlimited sexual novelty at the press of a button. Now, large amounts of dopamine are released in the brain in response to sexual cues. If you've been on this channel for a while, you've heard me talk about it. But most people think of dopamine, and I see it written about in the media all the time, as a pleasure chemical, which isn't really true. It's kind of misleading. It's more associated with desire and motivation and need than pleasure. It's often frustrating to actually be watching porn for people who are addicted to it, because they often feel like satisfaction is right around the corner, but they can never actually get there because that dopamine is pushing them on to do something, to seek, to grab, to obtain. And they're constantly seeking whatever more exciting, more novel image is going to be found on the internet next. But once they're done, it's not actually satisfying. It feels empty because there was no other person there. There's no connection. There's no love. There's no actual intimacy. There's no accomplishment. And that's why many people start to delay orgasm as long as possible and edge, because orgasm, though it is the most pleasurable part of the experience, physically speaking, it is also a rude awakening back to reality. Because when we're caught up in that dopamine craze, seeking, we can forget about everything else. It just sweeps us along in a river of desire. And that is quite intoxicating, even if it's frustrating, actually, when we stop to think about it. And not actually pleasurable, like, for example, getting a good massage when you're sore after a sports game, or drinking a cold drink on a hot day. I continued to masturbate through Instagram pornography until I was about 12 and a half. Even though it was a very long process to get this porn, I still didn't go to the length of actually going onto porn websites, as I thought my mother had blocked them. But one day I realized that she didn't block pornography on my electronic devices, and this is where I believe the second stage of my PIED kicked in. At this point, I was about 12 and a half, and I was able to access video porn whenever I wanted. This was like a luxury for me. I didn't have to search for porn, I could just access and binge watch porn whenever I wanted. I say at this point I was watching and ejaculating more and more. I think I was watching porn around 2 to 5 times a day. The porn that I was watching started getting progressively harder core. I started watching quite soft porn such as Latina, Ebony, and POV, but then I got bored of this and started developing very hardcore fetishes such as piss and crap porn or scat, incest, bestiality, animated, and even gay porn. Even though I'm 100% straight and didn't like it underneath, I still watched it and jerked off to it just for the dopamine rush. Although at this point, no alarm bells were ringing in my head because I could still get strong erections. Now, this is a kid who's 14 years old, maybe he was even 13 at the time he was watching this material, or 12. And this is someone who's probably never even had a kiss, never been on a date, watching bestiality pornography that runs against his natural inclinations for sexual attraction, violent pornography, scat and urine pornography, incest, the hardest of the hardcore, still borderline legal pornography that you can access online. This is what our children and our young people in our society are exposed to and getting hooked on at such a young age. And that is incredibly damaging, especially when they don't, like this young gentleman has, find answers and find that this is a problem early on. Because like he said, no alarm bells were ringing, even though he was watching all this material that was so extreme. Because even though it happened relatively quickly from our perspective, from his perspective, it probably was happening slowly. It was a gradual escalation and increase in the type of content he was watching. And like the frog being slowly boiled alive, he didn't realize what was happening until he really had problems. At this point, I had never been in a relationship and never even kissed a girl. My idea of sex and girls was purely based off of pornography. Do we really want our young people learning about relationships and sex from bestiality porn, incest porn, simulated rape porn? Man, we're in trouble. Ironically, I even remember a specialist coming into my school talking about the dangers of porn, such as creating unhealthy fantasies and even the dangers of PIED. That's huge. I'm really actually happy to hear that. Your school invited someone in to talk to the students about the potential dangers with pornography. Obviously, in your case, it was too little too late, but it was a seed, and it probably helped you when you finally did realize this was a problem to find answers. At this point, I was about 13 and was watching very hardcore porn for about 6 months. But at 13 onwards, I started to realize the quality of my erections were getting worse and worse. I started to subconsciously masturbate with semi-erections as I was just used to masturbating for the dopamine release. I soon wasn't able to get erections at all and was still climaxing while I was flaccid. Even though I couldn't get an erection to any sort of porn, I was still in denial. I am realizing how unhealthy that was. Now, most of the time, we can tell pretty easily if someone has porn-induced erectile dysfunction versus something else, because they can still get hard for pornography, but can't for real sex or maybe for masturbation without porn. However, just because you can no longer get erect for pornography doesn't mean it's something else other than PIED, because I've worked with plenty of people who get to the point where they've escalated so far and they've desensitized themselves so much that they can't even get aroused at least not enough to get an actual erection to their favorite porn or the most stimulating porn that's out there. They've just absolutely hit rock bottom and bottomed out their sexual sensitivity to the point where it's just not working anymore. And many of them, like yourself, are still able to reach orgasm without an erection, which is further desensitizing yourself and training yourself that you don't actually need an erection for orgasm and for climax. And it's also more risky because when fully erect, the penis is fairly durable and tough, but when it's only partly erect or flaccid, it's more prone to injury. And so people who masturbate without a full erection are more likely to develop some other issue that's not porn-induced, like Peyronie's disease. So I definitely don't recommend ever masturbating without a full erection. And I know that this is causing you to worry that something else might be going on, and that's not impossible. But give it a few months without pornography, and if there's no pain or no other symptoms that cause you concern, I think that you'll definitely start to see results. You're still very young, and younger people who catch it early and quit, are usually seeing faster results than someone like myself who started earlier than you and didn't quit until I was 24. But one day, I had a serious psychological change. I was at a house party and I kissed a girl for the first time. It was very intimate and I started to feel her up. But then she offered to give me a hand job, and I realized that I was unable to achieve an erection at this moment. I was so disheartened. Even though I was really into what was going on, I just couldn't get hard. The next week, rumors started spreading about me not being able to get hard. Obviously, I denied them and pretty much shut them down. No one really challenged me about it because I'm a fairly popular guy, but I still felt awful underneath. I was starting to feel a lot of social anxiety that I had never experienced before. This is when I realized how bad the situation was. I'm 14 and approaching the best years of my life, and I can't get erections. As I said, I am quite a popular guy, and I had a few girls knocking on the door for me. I think this just made the situation worse. Well, I don't have to imagine being in a situation like that and feeling how bad it feels to want this thing that you've been looking forward to for a large part of your life and be physically incapable of enjoying it. And I'm also very familiar with the psychological harm that can cause, the lack of self-confidence, the broken self-esteem, not knowing who you are sexually, and feeling broken as a man and as a male and as a sexual being. But you have caught it early. People with porn-induced sexual dysfunctions can recover. This doesn't have to hold you back or limit your future relationships. I started researching my dysfunction when I came across NoFap. I started immediately and didn't feel any craving, which was weird, as I had tried NoFap challenges before, such as No Nut November, and failed almost immediately, maybe on the first or second day. This is when I realized that when I had kissed the girl, it was like my brain clicked in some sort of deep psychological moment. I think my brain was rewiring before I'd even started NoFap in some degree. Yeah, you had an actual moment of intimacy and realized, holy cow, like this is what I want, not intimacy with a computer screen. And that is enough for some people to click their brain over to a different setting and realize that pornography is not ever going to get them what they want. It's not ever going to really be satisfying. And so hopefully now you are ready to leave it behind and live a porn-free life. After about 2.5 weeks after I was intimate with that girl, another girl tried to come on to me at a party. Even though I really wanted to be with that girl and have a sexual experience with her, I turned her down because I didn't want to face the embarrassment of her trying to have sex with me and me not being able to achieve an erection. This is when the social anxiety really kicked in. I can't stop thinking about not being able to get hard. It's blocking me in real-life situations, and I just want it to stop. I think it's leading me into depressive states. So, the explanation that most medical professionals will give you if you go to them and say that I'm not able to have sex, I have impotence, erectile dysfunction, and they test you for various physical causes and you come back clean, will be that, it's in your head, you have performance anxiety, you just need to learn to relax and get used to intimate contact and you'll be fine. But most of the people who have PIED, they might have some anxiety going into their first sexual experience, but usually it's not enough to limit them from being able to enjoy that experience and have a successful one. It is the porn-induced desensitization and sexual dysfunction that's the primary problem. But like you described, so many people develop increasing amounts of anxiety around sex because of their sexual dysfunction that's porn-induced. If you've failed multiple times and felt horrible about it, you start to dread the potential of a sexual experience, and it becomes not about just enjoying yourself and connecting with someone anymore. It's you all up in your head worrying about, what if it doesn't work? What will I say if it doesn't? Oh my God, what do I do? And that's not fun or relaxing or sexy in any way. And that can hold people back even after they're recovered and physically ready for sex. If they still hold on to that anxiety, that fear, that nervousness, and aren't able to just relax and be in the moment and enjoy themselves, that can still hold you back. So if you find that does, I recommend, talking with your parents about this. Maybe ask them if you can see a counselor. This counselor might not know anything about porn-induced sexual dysfunctions, but if you've been porn-free for long enough and you're recovering and you notice your physical recovery is progressing nicely, that person might be able to help you work through the emotional aspect of it, getting through the trauma of what you've experienced and learning how to leave that in your past and relax, enjoy future experiences. Now, one other thing that your family might be able to do for you if you do decide to bring them into this, tell them what you're going through, is help you remain porn-free. You mentioned before that for a long time you didn't even seek porn sites because you thought your family had blocked them, but then realized that they hadn't. Well, what if they did, and they installed the software on all your devices that not only blocked pornography, but allowed them to get an alert whenever you tried to seek out pornography or got accidentally exposed to a pornographic image? That could be very helpful for you as a deterrent, a good reason not to ever look at pornography because you'd have to explain that to your family members. Well, such a thing exists. It's called Covenant Eyes, and I highly recommend it for most of my clients, especially young people like you and a family whose parents want to help protect them and want to help them recover. And that's something that they can really help you with because for many people, even if they're using blockers, unless there's that accountability factor, knowing that whatever you do online is not in isolation and that you're going to have to talk about it with people you've selected as your allies, then it's easy to find a way around that blocker. There's always a way around it. But something like this, there's really no way around it. You're going to have to explain your internet activity if it's something that you agreed not to do. And here is where I am now. I'm writing to you on the 24th day of my NoFap challenge. I'm still not able to achieve a strong erection, even though I am getting spontaneous semi-erections. This worries me, as I believe that because my erections aren't that hard, this could be a medical dysfunction. But again, I highly doubt it. Now, given how severe your PIED became, that you couldn't even get an erection to pornography, and that you had escalated so far into so many extreme genres and really desensitized yourself, I'm impressed that you've seen as much progress as you have in 24 days, getting more spontaneous semi-erections. And you're probably seeing that fast of progress because you're still very young, 14, and you might be able to bounce back more quickly than someone who's been involved with this from just as young of an age as you, but for more years. So many people see significant, very significant progress within 90 days, porn-free. But most of those need longer than that to recover fully, and up to a year in many cases. Now, I don't think it will probably take you that long to get to the point where you're able to be sexually functional, just because you are 14, and I think you will bounce back faster than someone a bit older than yourself. But you shouldn't be worried at this point that because it's been 24 days, this process isn't working. It's very, very common. In fact, the vast majority of people need far longer than 24 days without porn to see the full benefits of being porn-free and recovering. So be patient, give it time. I'm really worried, Noah. I have a long summer ahead of me filled with partying and festivals, and most importantly, girls. So in light of this, I have a few questions to ask you. Can the quality of my erection be due to PIED? Answered that. How do I stop the social anxiety? Well, a big part of that will just be recovering and seeing the progress in your own body. And a lot of it is psychological, and knowing that you have this issue that you're ashamed of and you're embarrassed about and you don't want to share with anybody, that can isolate people and it can make you anxious around other people. But part of it too is that any addiction and any overstimulation of your brain, like pornography, consistent, frequent, extreme use of pornography can throw your brain out of balance and cause you to be less capable and socially confident than you would be otherwise. And that's why many people on this journey report feeling much more comfortable and confident around people, and also just enjoying their lives more because their brains are coming back into balance and they're finding their new normal. So you might find that a lot of this dissipates on its own. But if it doesn't, like I said, you might benefit from speaking with a counselor, talking with your parents, having people in your life you can talk to about this, and potentially asking your parents if they'll set you up with me so we can talk. How long will it take? I gave you some general outlines, but really every person is different. It takes how long it takes, and you just have to be patient and trust the process. How do I rewire my brain? I think we talked about that. And lastly, or one of the last ones, how do I know when I'm ready for the rewiring stage? So there's no reason to delay the most simple of rewiring, which is just being around people you're attracted to, flirting, talking, cuddling, kissing. For most of my clients, I recommend waiting to try sex, especially penis-oriented sex, until after they're feeling more of the physical recovery. Signs that is happening are strong erections when you're just kissing or cuddling, morning erections that are more frequent and stronger, things like this, more qualitative attraction for people in your life. And for you, however, you're 14 and you got a couple more questions here that I'm going to bring into this. You say, if smoking and doing drugs affect PIED, and if weed and nitrous oxide affect PIED. So I'm just going to take a little time here and preach to you as an old man, 29 years old, more than twice your age, actually, and give you a little wisdom, even though you're probably not going to listen to me. All right, even after you recover from PIED, I know that that's your focus right now. That's your main concern. You just want your ability to have an erection back so that you can enjoy your youth. I get it. I understand. But even after you have a working dick, it doesn't mean you should use it whenever you can. All right, there's a lot of instances where you shouldn't use it. And I know that, in this summertime, especially when you're off of school, all your peers and your friends are out partying, maybe experimenting with drugs, hooking up, whatever. You don't want to miss out on that. You got a fear of missing out. You want to live it up. I get it. All right. And I'm not going to tell you that trying recreational drugs once is necessarily going to ruin your life or anything like that. Though, some things can really harm you, especially when people buy something that they think is one thing, but it's really cut with another substance. It can cause reactions and things, health hazards that people wouldn't expect. So you got to be cautious with this stuff, but really it's usually the habitual use of these substances that can really start to hurt people. There's good reason for alcohol to not be sold to anyone under 21, and for, in the states where recreational marijuana is allowed, for that not to be sold to anyone under 21 either. It has a huge effect, used consistently, on the developing brain. And many of your peers who are following their impulses and just living it up right now, they might be making mistakes that are going to haunt them for the rest of their lives. And they might be developing addictions that they might have for the rest of their lives, becoming alcoholics or becoming reliant on marijuana or whatever other drugs. They might be engaging in sexual hookups with people that they don't really care about, which can result in STDs, unwanted pregnancy, or just allowing toxic people into your intimate life that you don't really feel a bond with. And that can be damaging over the long term. And it can feel like, especially with the way media is portrays like hookup culture these days that happiness lies at the end of getting a lot of hookups with many different attractive women. But that lifestyle just does not lead to good results. And many people are lucky enough to experiment with all this and have a lot of partying and fun and hookups and experiment with drugs and make it out the other side without huge consequences. They end up going beyond that, finding passions, finding pursuits, finding purpose in their lives, and finding real connection with a person that they care about and building lasting, loving, trusting relationships. But many people are not so lucky and either develop addictions that are, other addictions aside from pornography, sex addictions, love addictions, drug addictions, alcohol addictions, or develop other problems from this pleasure-seeking, irresponsible behavior. And I don't want to see you replace one addiction with another. Pornography trains us to follow our impulses, to seek pleasure wherever we can find it, and to ignore our better judgment and the part of ourselves that can foresee consequences and knows what's actually going to be good for us in the future. And even after we leave porn behind, those patterns can persist in us, and we can pursue those patterns in other areas of our lives. But you can be smarter than that, all right? You can think smarter than a lot of your peers are thinking right now and see that, happiness doesn't lie in the rat race that a lot of the people around you are probably engaged in right now. And you can focus more on what you're passionate about, focus more on finding purpose and finding hobbies, joining teams and clubs, making real friendships, finding, a woman or a girl that you really admire and respect, and forming a friendship, a bond, and a relationship with that person that you can be proud of. Someone that you're proud for people to see on your arm, rather than just hooking up with as many people as possible. All right, that's my old man rant. Wisdom from year 29 of my life, given to you at year 14. I hope you take some of it to heart, or if you don't listen to it now, just remember what I said and come back to it later when you realize that all this partying, getting drunk, trying a lot of drugs, hooking up with random people you don't care about isn't actually making you happy. The predominant culture is going to lie to you a lot in this life. It's going to mislead you. It's going to lead you down a path that doesn't actually take you where you want to go. We have to think for ourselves, and we have to decide what's important to us and not listen to culture without any doubt or without any critical thinking. Okay. I also can't get a hard-on while watching any type of porn. Does that mean it's a medical problem? I answered that. This is fairly common with severe PIED, so no. Thank you, Noah. You really are helping people's lives, and for that, I simply can't thank you enough. Well, thank you for sharing this story. It's very brave of you, even though it was anonymous, of course. I hope that you do let some people in your real life, and I hope to hear from you again in the future. For anyone out there who is looking for some personal guidance, you can find ways to work with me on my website, addictedtointernetporn.com, where you can also find my book for free as a PDF. Just subscribe to my newsletter. It'll be sent to your inbox. All right, I'm here to help you reach your goals. I see people struggle for years on their own thinking, I can do this by myself. I don't need help. I can read the books, I can watch the videos, and I can manage this on my own. It's tragic because I see these people struggle for years and get caught in cycles and end up entrenched in a binge and purge cycle that's maybe more pernicious and more harmful than their addiction initially was. Yo-yoing back and forth between feeling great, feeling like they're recovering, and then crashing and burning and binging. I don't want you to go through that. I want to help you recover from addiction, if that's something you're struggling with, recover from sexual dysfunction, find real happiness in a real relationship, communicate with your partner, foster a healthy, happy, joyous relationship. So, if you're ready for that, find me. You know where to look. I'll see you next time. Coach Church out.